Hi, I'm Barbara Robbins,
And I'm Breanna Cox.
and together we are the Awakened Woman. Welcome to our podcast. Today's topic is navigating financial conversations with confidence. Tips for women to handle money talks with ease in personal and professional settings. So, Brianna, let's get started with a burning question. Why are financial conversations often so difficult for women?
I feel that it really has a lot to do with how society has structured the financial pyramid, if you will. And I think it has a lot to do with masculinity versus femininity in the workplace. And I feel that in a general sense, and I know we've talked about this before, like the workplace is more geared toward masculine energy and masculine structures. And so what it does is because a lot of women are subconsciously encouraged to be more, let's say, passive in the workplace and to not really ask for things that they want. There's also the whole quid pro quo, sexual assault and sexual pressures that exist for women as well. So I think it's sort of a battlefield of, feminism versus femininity, how the workplace is structured and how as a woman, excuse me, can I be taken seriously and ask for what is rightfully mine without coming off too harsh, not taken seriously, or just rejected altogether. And so I think that could be something that a lot of women struggle with. And it's as simple as asking for what you want and know that you deserve, and that might be simple for a lot of masculines, but when it comes to feminine energy, it can be a little more challenging.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking back to just work situations that I've been in and just in general feeling the collective of women working in offices and or just women being around men. Um, and the well, I guess, side note here, uh, financial conversations are not just about women to men. They can also be women to women. But I don't think
Mhm.
we've looked at that. So we'll get into that in a minute. Um, but generally, you think about financial conversations as either talking with a husband or like your employer. And I just think about how I've always felt like physically vulnerable around men, and they're the ones that are in control, and men, they can they can get, I've known a number of men that just can get angry so quickly, and
Mhm.
it's scary when they just lose it.
Right. Absolutely. I've been there, right there with you. Being in positions of domestic violence with romantic partners,
Hmm.
positions of emotional and verbal abuse with parents. And essentially, I even had somebody try to kill me at one point in time that was actually a romantic partner plus um, rape as well. And so that threat is real. And, not to go too far off topic, but the statistic for rape is one out of every four women are raped, which means one out of every four men are rapists. That's a sad statistic. It's kind of scary to think about, but that's the reality. And so as women, we face threats every day that men will never really fully understand. They can sympathize, but they won't understand. But as you said, it going beyond that, even just having a financial conversation woman to woman can be intimidating or it can be hard. And I think in general, just learning to ask for what we want, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's home, whether it is among family, friends, partners, even children, that can be tough, and that goes back to the whole feminine energy of learning how to ask for what you want, learning how to receive. I was actually talking to a client about this the other day. She's been struggling with continually attracting in her reality field people that constantly don't do things for her, and she feels like if I don't do it, it won't get done. But because she has that wound from childhood of having to take care of an alcoholic parent, that is perpetuated through her reality, where now her entire reality in her external reality as a reflection of the inner world is she's constantly having to take care of people she doesn't want to take care of. And so I asked her to practice something very simple. I said, start asking for what you want. And then if somebody doesn't want to do something and you don't want to do it, don't, don't be afraid to pull back your energy. Don't feel like you have to control the situation. The whole world's not going to fall apart because you're not stepping up to the plate, especially when it's that person's, responsibility in certain cases. And so I told her, I said, just practice being in that vulnerable energy, practice asking for help. Ask for help even when it's something you know how to do. Even, when it's something that you might even do better than that person. Not to do a comparison game, but just the act of practicing asking for things and being in that receptive energy can really help us when it comes to asking for big things, in circumstances where it really matters.
You're gonna have to remind me if I've told you this story already, but it just brought up a story about asking for help. Um, the first year that I was married, I had to take the snow tires out of the trunk of my car and put them in the basement in the storage area. And I was in the alley, and my and I'd done this before, and I can do it. And my husband happened to come out there and see me, and he says, "Here, well, let me do it for you." And I refused his help because if I let him do all this really hard stuff, then I'd get weak and I wouldn't be able to do it myself. And
Oh
years later, I
boy.
look back at that and go, what an idiot I was. He wanted to help you. Let him help you. There's
We've
nothing
all been there.
wrong.
Well, I mean, not all of us, but a lot of us. I could definitely relate. There have been many times I've done that. So absolutely.
Yes, when somebody offers to help, let them help. Say yes to the help.
Absolutely. And it really comes down to fear of losing control, and this also translates to the universe. Like, how can we expect to magnetize what we desire and let the universe create things for us, like as a co-creator, and allow, how can we step back into that energy of receiving and attracting once we put those intentions out? If we're scared to ask for help because we're scared of what the result's going to be, or we're scared of letting go of control. Like, if I let go of control, then what? And it's like, that's the very thing we need to do in order to allow, something bigger, so to speak, to step in and work on our behalf. The universe is an external reality being a reflection of the internal reality. And so I really feel like it also has to do with us, learning to let go of control so that things can flow. Let go and then flow. And so that's part of it too, because I know for me, when I was in my 20s, especially, I had a hard time. I would even do things even if all I had to do was ask, or even if someone offered, just because I wanted to make sure it got done the way I wanted it to do. And it's like, is that really important? Because you would have more time and a softer existence if you let other people, if you delegate more, or if you ask for help more instead of trying to do it all yourself. And especially, just sort of going back around to, for example, businesswoman or professional woman, especially one that has role overload, where you're like a mother and you're a wife and you have this business and you also have this responsibility over here. And it's like, it really makes a big difference if you can let go and let other people step in and do things for you when you need it. Even if it's not done to your standard, it's still done, and it gives you space to, rest or to do other things that you need to do.
That's bringing up two things, practice sessions and not being good enough.
Oh, hey, babe, would you have me a soda, please? Yeah, thank you. That's a perfect example of what we're just talking about. I didn't even think about it. I'll leave that in there.
So the first thing that I thought of just now when you were talking was that we get, like, when you're training for something, you have to practice a lot. And we're like training for life. And we have all these practice opportunities where people are coming and saying, "Oh, can I help you with that? Can I do this for you?" There's little tiny things. Or would you like some tea? You know, and that there are times when we get to practice like, yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. So then when the big thing comes of your husband wanting to take the snow tires out of the car for you, you're used to saying, "Oh, thank you. Yes." So you don't go, "No, I need to do it myself so I can stay strong." It's like you're if you negate all those practices and the big things and you say no, then the universe is eventually going to go, "Oh, you want to do it all yourself? You don't need my help? Okay, well, let's see how you do on your own. I won't ask you anymore. Good luck. Have a nice
Exactly.
life."
Exactly. And I love that you said that because in that video I mentioned earlier, I might even actually for our listeners, I might even add that in the description when we post this. But the video I was referring to earlier, they were talking about that, how when we're assuming things, that's the reality we create, right? And so wealth is like a resort of wealth is like it is a result, not a reward. So it's a result of what we're welcoming in and what we are assuming will come. And so if we are constantly trying to do everything on our own, then we're going to start attracting those types of situations, like you were saying, where, yeah, we're just going to be surrounded by people and situations that will reflect that back to us, where we're having to perpetually do everything on our own. And so the very thing that we're like, kind of like, oh, I've always had to do it. You know, if I don't do it, no one will do it. And, you know, that kind of stuff. Um, Not to say that that's like what we're talking about specifically, but the more we do that, then we reflect that back to ourselves. And I actually watched that in childhood with one of my own parents, where she was constantly complaining when something would be done because it wasn't done to the way she wanted it, to where her partner stopped altogether. And she would, you know, she would want him to do things, but then she wouldn't let him do it. And what was funny is I watched him go more into the feminine energy of him, like just not doing things, and then she would just do them. So because the masculine energy works, so the masculine is active. And so the less the feminine does, the more masculine the masculine feels. Like he feels like he can step up and be a man. He can protect her. He can provide for her. He can do these things for her. It doesn't have to be anything big, just in small things. Like it actually gives him a sense of purpose. Whereas feminines, the more we take on, the more we do, we actually get resentful. We
Yeah.
actually, you know, we'll start feeling like, well, why do I have to do this and why do I have to do that? And so when those roles are reversed, you know, even if like a masculine might think, you know, he's got it made if he's with a masculine woman because he can sit back more, he really will start to feel aimless and purposeless, like he has nothing going on for himself. And she'll start to feel bitter and resentful, like she's, you know, wanting a way out. And
Yeah.
there's always that opportunity to reverse that, you know, and to correct that. But I've just seen that play out. I've seen that play out with my parents. And I had a rare opportunity of seeing two different dynamics because the first 13 years of my life, well, not really the full 13 because my mom married my dad who raised me, who was my stepdad when I was 6. But from the age of 4 to 13, I got a chance to see that dynamic. And then I moved in with my biological father, who was the polar opposite, very masculine, but also at times very toxic masculine. And his wife was very feminine, but at times like a doormat, basically. So I got to see like both extremes of those polarities at a very early age, and I had to see it play out and what was working and what wasn't. But because of those deep subconscious programs from those two very extreme polarized views, it was actually very difficult for me to have healthy relationships for a long time. But, you know, what unlocked it for me was understanding that the universe, the energy works in polarities, but it also works in knowing when to give and knowing when to receive, knowing when to move and knowing when to sit back and wait, knowing when to ask for help. And that asking for help isn't a weakness when you're a feminine. It actually empowers you. It lets you be in your softer energy where you'll shine, where you can be more creative, where you can be more supportive to the masculine. You're going to be in your most fully developed, beautiful goddess essence when you are in your feminine energy. Whereas when you're in your masculine energy, you're going to be, more than likely tired, burnout, and resentful.
And that brings me to going back to when you were first saying wealth is a resort.
A
By
result.
accident, you said that, and you
Oh, a
meant result.
resort.
But you said
Interesting.
you said, remember, you said resort, wealth is a
Oh my
resort.
God. That's interesting.
And you said
Okay.
it, that happened like three times.
Oh
So
wow.
so I went, okay, that she meant to say that. And
That's
so I
crazy.
looked up the definition of resort. So wealth as a resort is a place where people frequent or go for relaxation or pleasure.
Oh my God. That's brilliant, Barbara. I didn't even catch that. Thank you for catching that very purposeful subconscious slip.
You're welcome. I love when those happen. So the next question is there a cost from avoiding financial conversations? And that feels like, of course there's a cost, but it's such a bummer. I don't even know that I want to talk about it.
I think that our listeners know the cost of that. They're trying to find, they're trying to get the solution. They're trying to, like circumnavigate that and learn how to have these conversations.
Right.
So,
So my next question, which I think is going to be a better one to talk about, is what's the connection between confidence in money conversations and overall financial well-being? Well, when we set off a vibe of scarcity and concern and worry, that's the vibe we're sending out into the universe. And the universe is going, oh, she's she's worried about that. So we'll give her more of that. Whatever we send out, we get more back in return. So if I'm worried and scared, then the universe is going to give me more stuff to be worried and scared about.
mhm,
But
mhm.
when I'm confident, I'm even if you're in a situation where you've lost your income, instead of freaking out about it and worrying, where's money going to come from? What am I going to do? How am I going to pay my bills? If you can relax into it and know that, and I know this can be really hard at times, but know that everything always works out and there's a reason for everything, and that this is an amazing opportunity for me to watch and see how it's all going to shake out,
Mhm.
then really interesting and amazing things show up, and you can get through that time of no or low income easier, maybe faster.
Mhm.
I don't know. I
I
don't have
feel
brilliant
I
things
feel
to say.
like no, that's on point. And I just to piggyback up of what you're saying, I feel like it goes back to the assumption principle. Like we need to assume that the universe has our back. And what might help some listeners is this helps me, and this may not work for everybody, but remembering that the external and the internal are really reflections of each other. And so I feel like in understanding that from a quantum physics perspective, which combines spirituality and science, which is, science is spiritual. When we look at it like that, then the ball is in our court So even when we're letting the universe build for us, we're still in control because we're the ones dictating, we're the ones doing the inner work and doing the inner rituals and the affirmations, visualization, feeling through sensory activities, all these things supporting this belief. It's really us that is determining our reality. And when we look at it from that standpoint, that's helped me to understand that I'm the one, I'm the one in my power. I'm the one sitting on my throne. There's no one to blame. The universe isn't picking on me. And that if I understand that anything that I'm creating internally, that is going to be like reflected and magnified back to me. And so a lot of people may suffer like with the whole like savior program where they're waiting for someone to save them. But that's also perpetuating that constant victim and martyrdom type circumstance. Whereas if we just say, hey, I'm the one that is responsible for changing my reality because imagination, is the universe, is God, is consciousness. And when I imagine and I believe and I feed into that feeling and repetition, that reality is going to be reflected back because that's just how it works. When I look at it from that standpoint, there's no room for doubt. There's no room for disbelief. And again, this may not work for everybody, but this has been something that's helped me over the years. I know that I'm the one that is on the throne. Now, where surrender comes in is once I have set the stage, once I have set those intentions and I set the assumption and I embody that energy and I walk in it, I then let the universe take over and build that for me. And so it's that dynamic dance between understanding the inner and the outer, as above, so below, as then so without, are really the same energy. It's all consciousness. So we are in control and we're not in control at the same time. But yet that's the beauty of it. We take the steps, we do what's necessary, we do the inner work, and then the universe reflects back to us that. And so it's not about external effort. It's just about alignment. And it's just about believing and assuming, and the universe just reflects that back to us.
A few years ago, I was putting a trust agreement together, and in the middle of doing that, it came to me the phrase "trust that it's in the trust fund."
Ooh. Ooh, that's good. I like that.
I know. It's like mind blower.
That's powerful.
Yeah, we have to take a moment of silence here to just let that sink in. Trust that it's in the trust fund. The universe has already set up a trust fund for us.
Mm,
We're taken care of.
mhm,
Everything is taken care of.
mhm.
Because it's not a trust fund that says, oh, you won't get anything until you're 35.
Or you don't get it at all and it passes on to a beneficiary.
Right. Or you won't get anything until you're married. Or you won't get
Right.
anything if you stay married to that jerk.
Right.
It's like, okay, let's imagine this trust fund, the ideal trust fund would say, we have everything you need for every aspect of your life, and it will be given to you as you need it, as you become aligned
Mm-hmm.
with it.
Mm-hmm.
So, who are we not to be confident about what we desire in anything, but especially finances?
And ask for it. Be confident enough
and
to
ask
ask for
for,
it because we
yeah.
know it's already ours.
Oh my God. I forgot I was going to bring this up and I didn't even see the note in red on my notes here before I just said this. I have the most amazing story to tell about what happened when I asked my boss for a raise.
Oh, please, please. That's perfect.
So, I don't I don't think no, I wasn't married yet, but I was dating the guy that I was going to marry, and I was not happy with my salary at work, and so I was asking my boyfriend, yeah, I'm not sure what to say. I don't know how to ask for a raise, and he said, okay, we're going to break down everything you do into percentages of time. And so
Mm,
first he said, what do you do? It's like I do reception work. I do some graphic design work. I do some photography. I I'm a gopher and whatever else I do. And then he said, okay, what percentage of the time do you do reception work? So I figured that out. And he said, and what percentage of the time do you do graphic design? And he went through each item and we figured out what percentage of the time during the day that I do each of those things. And then he said, if someone were to be a receptionist full time, what is their full time salary? If someone were a photographer full time, what's their full time salary? And so for
mm,
each thing, if they did it full time, what's their full time salary? And then you do the math that if you're a receptionist 20% of the time, then you take the full time salary and you multiply that by 20%. And that's how much you should be making for being a receptionist. Are you following me on that? Is it clear? Okay.
I'm definitely picking up where you're going with this.
And so we did that with each thing, and then you total up all the money, the percentages. And for my particular job, this then is how much my annual or monthly, whatever salary should be. It's just facts,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not making this up. This is the going rate for a receptionist, and I do that 20% of the time. So I should be making this, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And so that felt really good to have that number. And then he said, go to lunch with your boss. And at the end of lunch, go through the same process with him and say to him, would you say that I do reception work about 20% of the time? And he'd go, yes. And would you say I do photography about X percent? And he'd say yes. And if it changes at all, you just change it up right there on the spot. And we went
Mm-hmm.
through and would you agree that I do this, this, and this? And each one,
Mm-hmm.
this percentage of the time. And so I did that with him. And then I did the math and I, you know, it was out of his mouth.
Right.
So
It becomes his idea at that point, and he's already agreed through Socratic method. So where can he go from there when you present him with, well, that's if you're saying you're acknowledging that I'm doing each of these jobs this percentage of the time, and this is the salary that person would make. Therefore,
I
I
thought he
should be
was going to
making this
have,
amount.
I thought he was going to have a heart attack right there in the restaurant. So my boss said, well, I have two partners. I need to go take this back to them and discuss this with them. And I'm like, okay, fine. So he goes and he talks to them and they say, no, we're
Oh,
not giving
wow.
her a raise. So I quit.
Good for you.
And a couple of years later, I'm waiting in line to get in to see a movie. And one of the partners comes up and stands behind me in line. And he says, I have to tell you, when Willie came to us and told us what you wanted for a salary, I said, no, absolutely not. And then we had to find someone to replace you. And everyone that we interviewed came in and asked for the salary that you were asking for.
Oh, that's great. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I
And
love
in
that.
my head, I'm like, you asshole. You had to train somebody you lost. It takes what, like 3, 4 months to train somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So not only did you have to pay them what you could have paid me, you lost money in that you had to train them for a few months.
Mm-hmm. So the universe was showing you basically, because that was a lesson for them because they kept getting the same amount that people were asking over and over again, and then they had to train somebody. So they actually lost.
Yeah,
Whereas if you stuck to your convictions and left, so you didn't lose out in that sense. Like you would have lost out if you would have, that would have put you in a position of them having power over you if you would have stayed, and you not honoring those convictions and not standing your ground. But that's part of feminine energy too, is setting boundaries, being like, okay, this is what I need or want. And then that's okay if you don't agree, but I'm going to go where I am, where my boundaries are respected, where I'm being valued. So if I'm not valued here, I know that the universe will set me up with somewhere where I am valued and where I do get what I deserve. That's part
yeah,
of feminine energy too.
yeah. And I did wind up getting a much better job after that.
Yep. And they had the opportunity. They had the opportunity to adjust and honor your boundaries and, you know, give you what the value that, give you what you deserve, as a valuable employee. And they didn't. So they lost out in the end. And I love that the universe let you know that they went through that lesson. That's
I
awesome. I love when
know.
that happens.
That was awesome.
So did you have any final thoughts like for the listeners as far as like your personal experience or your personal advice for this type of, for asking for things when it comes to finances or in the workplace?
Trust that it's in the trust fund.
Absolutely.
Bottom line is when you develop confidence in money conversations, you open the door to greater financial stability, stronger relationships, and the ability to create the life you truly desire. Money isn't just about numbers, it's about energy, self worth, and empowerment.
Yes. Yes and
So,
yes.
next time, we're diving into something that so many of us dream about, creating a business you truly love. If you've ever felt stuck in work that drains you or wondered how to turn your passion into a thriving business, this episode is for you. We'll be sharing how to align your career with your purpose, overcome the fears that hold you back, and build a business that not only supports you financially, but also lights up every day. Don't miss it. Until next time, I'm Barbara,
And I'm Brianna.
and we are the Awakened Woman.